So it's great to speak today with Chris Ruddock, Managing Director at INCUS Performance. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Gary. Yeah, thank you. Doing really well. Yeah,
Good,
it's good to
good,
be
good.
here.
It's
On the
yeah,
show.
been an interesting year. Sort of going to get straight into that. It's certainly been an exciting time for you guys. Maybe to start with, what would be really useful if you could give us a bit of a background to you, because obviously we're discussing beforehand. You've had quite an interesting career so far. So maybe sort of start with your time at Loughborough University and just sort of give us a bit of a background to you. I think it'd be great, to put things into context that way.
Yeah, of course. So I've been fascinated by technology since I was a toddler, and so naturally that kind of moved into a career within engineering. So I'm a mechanical manufacturing engineer by training, but I'd refer to myself as a design engineer because I'm a little bit snooty in the idea that you've got to have a combination of user-focused design and the backing of true mechanical engineering to make a product that's exceptional. It's got to look good and feel good for a user. It's also got to work really well, and it can't have either one of those two. So, I studied at Loughborough University in design engineering, which had that kind of element of both, which has really set the foundation really for where I was going. I didn't intend to go into sports actually when I started that degree, but down the slippery slope of being at the world's best sports university, I kind of got involved in that relatively early on. I've always been involved in sport personally, but I've never thought to proceed into a career really.
So how did that happen then? Yeah, how did you make that little transition career-wise then?
Well, it's interesting because I was a competitive swimmer back in the day, from starting off in the swimming lessons, moving through into kind of club level, and then into national kind of level pool swimming. So I've had that background to me, and always enjoyed kind of being outdoors and getting involved in stuff in that way. But kind of combining those two things really came when I was studying. I wanted to work and understand a little bit more about the industry, to see where I would take things forwards after my degree. And I found a guy who was designing bicycle frames. Just search on the internet who designs GB bike frames, as you do when you're searching for a replacement. And it turned out that there was this chap who was doing a speech or a talk up in Edinburgh, and so I kind of used some like little students ways as you do by saying, "Oh, I'm a student. Can I have this guy's email address?" to the organizer of the event, and managed to get that one. And the chap turned out to live literally 2 miles away from me here in Nottingham.
Okay.
So
you want to drop a name in?
Yeah, so this is Dimitris Katsanis of Metron Advanced Equipment, as it was known at the time, and he is from the year 2000, I think. He's been a pioneer in carbon frame bicycle design. So he designed all of the track bikes for Team GB throughout their medal-winning successes, as part of what's kind of known as the Secret Squirrel Club, if anyone's heard of that before. So I kind of collared him and said, "Look, I want you to give me a job. I'll work with you." And he was on his own for the last 10 years, and I made him hire me. And they're literally designing the world's finest bicycle frames and equipment for the likes of British Cycling, Team GB, other sports like British Skeleton, in a very strange environment, which was an office above Thornton's in a small suburb of Nottingham called Beeston.
Lovely. So you're above a chocolate shop. That's handy, I suppose.
That was it. It wasn't very good if you want to smell the chocolate coming up there, but it basically was a crash course in design, engineering, applied engineering design to the highest performance sports equipment that you can get, really. And it was massive kind of inspiration, but it was one of those where I worked harder in that year than I think I've ever worked before. But what it did was it gave me that understanding that two guys in a room in the middle of nowhere can be sat there and designing literally some of the best equipment in the world. And I also, as part of that work, so I designed fully a new carbon tandem frame. So that's a 2-person bike for use in the Paralympic Games. And I was able to see that bike that I designed racing around in Rio. I went to see it and help those athletes to I think set a new Paralympic record and win a number of medals. So having seen that journey throughout and actually knowing that it's possible to make such an incredible influence on an event like the Paralympics, from such a small kind of rather strange scenario, really, it kind of laid the foundation of where I went to, and realized actually you can push the boundaries of any technology by just having a dedicated team, and really just putting everything into it, which is what I did over that year.
Wow. So how did INCUS come about then? So obviously you were working with Dimitrios, and then I'm guessing you thought, I've got this idea, let's take it to the next level, kind of thing.
Exactly. Well, before that time, as I said, I was a competitive swimmer. I actually lost the hearing in my left ear due to a really bad ear infection. That meant that communication in that training environment was quite tricky. So that kind of put an end to my swimming career, as it were. I was never going to be that great. But it highlighted the importance of communication in that training environment. And so as an engineer, I turned to technology, and I thought, how can I solve this problem? How can I I turned to maths and to numbers to communicate, rather than through verbal communication, which I found difficult at the time. So that really progressed to starting with prototypes of measuring key performance indicators through sensors that you put on your body. It measures how you're moving, and then you can start to understand and quantify how people are performing and their technique in order to improve that communication. That's really where it started. And the confidence that I had designing the bikes and seeing them and the other stuff that I did with some of the pro tours gave me that kind of push to say, you can do this. So I took it on, started off as a super rough prototype, literally a massive electronics in like a plastic bag wrapped in gaffer tape, literally strapped on my back with gaffer tape. It was horrendous. But the key thing was that demonstrated the concept. It didn't have to do anything more than prove that you could take a single device, put it in a single location at the back, and measure multiple performance indicators from using clever algorithms, effectively, so software. And so that really set the scene for where INCUS is today, and progressed that through just by sheer obsession. I think I just got hooked by it, really, by doing that project that started in my bedroom, took it through as I was a student, and finished my degree. It was a rather protracted degree because I did an extra year as a master's. And within that time, I had a stint. I was invited over to MIT over in Boston, which with the concept that was INCUS at that time, to progress it as a business case. And so really I was able to learn from the masters over there in America on how to commercialize a technology and how to drive an innovation-led business, which at the time I had very little experience with. So that's kind of how these things kind of came together, that confidence and that understanding that you can really perform on the global stage with a small team from the bikes, then coupled with that experience at MIT about commercializing this in the business case, and that those two came together into what we now see as INCUS Performance, which is wonderful. And we've now got a team of I think 12 of us now that we're growing rapidly and really changing the way that people use information in not only swimming as it started, but in the triathlon sports, that's swimming, running, and cycling.
Okay, yeah, I want to get into that in a bit more detail. Maybe we just start with swim for a second. So the metrics that you're measuring, because myself, I'm a terrible swimmer. A number of triathletes may find the swim element perhaps, well, not always, but not in all cases, but perhaps the least enjoyable, or certainly the one where technique is everything. So and my understanding of the product is that, as you say, you fit it behind, in between your shoulder blades. It's in a jersey. So you're in open water or you're in a pool, you're swimming crawl, and therefore the device will give you that data to help you understand and optimize your stroke, essentially. I'm guessing that's the way that it operates.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's a small device that we call INCUS Nova that, as you say, it sits in apparel on the upper spine here. So the reason why we've put it in that position is that it's very good for measuring the way that your whole body is moving through space, as opposed to an extremity like your wrist, for example. We all know that you can fool some smart watches or some fitness trackers by shaking your wrist. What we're looking at is more the details of how that person is moving through space and the technique that they're using. And we can measure both left and right hand sides by that position and the clever algorithms that we're working with. So you simply pop the device in, you press a single button, and then you forget about it. You continue on training. In the swimming case, then you just push off and do your lengths. And then at the very end, you press another button. So no kind of tapping in between lengths or anything like that. The way that we're trying to integrate data is having it as a supporting kind of information rather than getting away of your stroke technique. It's another reason why it's on your back. So we've developed some specialist apparel, which is similar to those that you'd see with the rugby trackers, perhaps, on the field. But this is specifically developed by us for swimming. It's a high performance training vest. And the real innovations that we've put into that mean that you simply can't feel it when you're in the water, which is quite an incredible feat. And we have the validation to actually back up that there's no additional drag when wearing the vest top as to not wearing it for a variety of ages and for men and women as well. So it's press the button, start and stop, and then sync it to your phone. And then there you go, you've got results immediately in session. So the type of results, as we kind of alluded to, we've got your standard split times and things that your normal stopwatch might give you, or smartwatch. So your smartwatch might tell you, what you did in terms of how long it took to get from A to B. And what we're saying instead is how that person got from A to B and what they need to do to get better in the future. So instead of thinking,
you get like the SWOLF score, which some might utilize, obviously with a degree of stroke efficiency, but measurement. But I'm guessing that you're able to provide data a much finer level of metric, I suppose, that enables you to drill in a lot more into aspects of the stroke.
Yeah, we go into real heavy detail. So your typical trackers might give you your stroke count and your distance, perhaps. Yeah. What we're doing is we're able to automatically recognize your sets and structure when you're not swimming and when you are swimming. Identify your stroke type as well, so to get those split times as well. So those standard metrics are covered. We'll give you stroke rates, durations, and on left and right hand sides independently, which is quite key. The more new things that we're bringing, that level of detail, we actually look into the angles of the body. So when you're swimming in front crawl particularly, you're rolling from left to right, and we're able to measure that body roll angle as you're moving through the water on both left and right hand sides, and also the pitch, so actually how much your legs are kind of coming down, which is quite key. Traditionally for triathletes, they struggle with that, and they have buoyancy from the wetsuits to keep those legs up. But we're able to actually quantify exactly how much your legs are dropping over a period of time, and how your fatigue starts to kind of show that drop is coming. We also have things like push-off strength, and quite a key metric that we refer everything back to is what we call velocity gain. So that's a new metric that we've come up with with INCUS. What that does is a bit of an efficiency score. To explain what velocity gain is, it is, in the swimming stroke, there are always propulsive and drag forces. So there's always the water that's kind of getting in your way. What velocity gain does is it measures the ratio of those forward forces to the backward forces, and say whether you're typically gaining speed per stroke or if you're typically losing speed per stroke. So it's an efficiency score there that goes beyond your speed, because if you've got a technique, your velocity gain per stroke will be lower, because of you can improve your velocity gain and be effectively more streamlined by flat pitch angle, for example. That's what we tend to do.
And I'm guessing, obviously, particularly with those swimmers where technique is an issue, that trails off as they get to the back end of a session. As they get more tired, I'm guessing that the velocity gain is less, as it were. Yeah.
All of this is about trying to measure efficiency and improving that, as well as your overall speed. So you either want to go faster or you want to keep the same pace with less energy. So what we're doing with these metrics are trying to give people and shed that light on how they're performing in that effort, rather than simply just the end result. Because most coaches would say, well, okay, you went X% slower on that one, try hard next time, or whatever it's going to be. Try this, try that. What we're able to do, and one of the examples we've had with our coaches in the early goes was exactly the same scenario. A swimmer actually swum in the pool swimming scenario a couple of seconds slower over a 100-meter stint. She said, I couldn't have been swimming any faster in that slower rep. When looking at the numbers that we provided, we were able to actually say that she was swimming faster in her swimming leg. It was actually her start that failed her, and so she lost time on the start, but actually then tried to make it up.
Okay.
So numbers to actually quantify where the areas that you should be looking at are, whether that's your rotation and that's an inefficient catch, for example, or whether that's actually simply fatigue just coming in. We can start to measure these things, which typical wearables can't really shed light on. So it's all about these stories that we're trying to generate. For us, it's not about necessarily the numbers and the data. Our mission really is to tell the stories behind, the greatest athletes on the planet. And we believe, to be great, it doesn't matter about how fast you are. It doesn't matter about how long you've been doing the sport. It's about the approach that you take in training. And so the approach we believe that's the right one is an approach of kind of clear goal setting, structured awareness, and kind of monitoring of what's working, what's not working, and then those marginal improvements as you move forwards. So you can do that by, whether it's just a stopwatch that you've got, or whether it's INCUS Nova, we believe is the best way of monitoring that and improving that approach, ultimately to become a great athlete.
So the swimmer or the athlete in general doesn't need a coach. The app will give markers, but as with all of these things, coach input, taking your stroke, visualizing someone in a pool, looking at the data from INCUS would be like the preferred approach, I suppose. But I'm guessing you've got a dual approach where there is that feedback that the app's giving you as well, for those that either can't afford or prefer not to have a coach.
Well, absolutely. I think what we're here is to provide the numbers and provide that kind of narrative to say, what's working and what's not working. Ultimately, a coach has the experience to apply that to say, this is what you should be doing with this, or this is what's preferable, and this is how you can actually change your training to improve these figures. That's something we want to address in the future with INCUS, which comes towards our predictive insights, which is something I'll probably talk about later. But at the moment, it's about telling that narrative, and we work best with coaches because those are the guys who we want to give this information to, and they're the ones that have actually been looking for this kind of stuff for a while. We've had coaches saying, look, I've been telling this particular athlete that they're over rotating on that right hand side for months, and now because you can see it and you can see a graph, it's like the light bulb goes off in the head. So it comes back to that original problem that we're trying to solve, which is communication. We're here to improve that communication, whether it's between a coach and an athlete, or between an athlete and themselves, effectively. So the system can be used. It's as simple to use. It doesn't require any training, and we've tried to make that experience really seamless and elegant for people, whether they are at the top of the field or whether they're just starting out.
Yeah, and run as well. So you've got the run offering, which you're just now rolling out. So maybe just talk briefly a bit about how that is aligned with the metrics that you're recording within swim. Would that be helpful?
Yeah. Well, we're super excited to announce the running launch. So it's the same device, the same technology that you wear. The apparel, you can have different versions of apparel now. So the swim specific vest top, you can take the device out and you pop it into another top, and we've got some really nice high performance running tees as a starting line of what we call INCUS enabled apparel. So the running launch, what that does and why we're so excited about it is it embodies the multi-sport approach which we've had from the start, but we started with the hardest one, which was swimming. And it's from a technology perspective, that's super difficult with water and wireless communications and all that malarkey. Now we have a really strong infrastructure to build off with the other sports of triathlon. So with the run, we will be integrating things like running power directly from your back, pacing, cadence, distance, body form in due course, which is about how much you're leaning or how much you're with. In my case, when I start to get tired, I get to the T-Rex stage. I think we all know what things we do when we're knackered after a run. But we're able to start to quantify these elements ultimately to tell that story of injury risk and fatigue indicators over a period of time. That's what we're trying to do. So all these kind of detailed things, you might say, why does that matter to me? Why do I care about takeoff, accelerations, and impact on my left and right hand sides independently, which is something that we're doing with the launch of running. It's actually, we want to start measuring these details to ultimately crunch those numbers for people to tell those stories in a clear and concise way. So we're starting off with these very detailed metrics, but those metrics start to give us an insight as to actually what's going on with the technique for our analytics and AI to process that in the future, to distill that into clear written statements for people so that they can understand what those numbers mean and how they interrelate rather than simply being bombarded by numbers.
Yeah.
So that's coming in a couple of weeks and we're really excited. We've been doing some trials with our alpha product with general public around the Midlands here in the UK. And it's been wonderful to see the reaction of how it's been going. Yeah.
Cool. And I'm guessing bike is in the pipeline as a metric measurement aspect.
Yeah,
Maybe not about that too much, but I'm guessing that's on the radar too.
Well, it's in progress. We're doing some early stages of data collection. What we have to do is we have to train the algorithms on how different people ride. So it's all about collecting information when people are out on very hilly rides or super hard rides or just sprints or whatever it's going to go. So the kind of things that we're excited to look into, things like body position, when you're in or out of the saddle, when you're in the drops on the hoods, how that affects your power. So it's all about connecting these pieces of data together. We developed the Nova because in swimming and in the other areas that we saw at the time, there was simply not the technology to measure those indicators to then tell that story. So we developed that product that then now can connect to additional sensors through AMP+ or BLE, Bluetooth. So things like your heart rate monitors and your power meters, we're actively connecting with them to pull that data in to then build up this kind of vivid database to tell those stories. So yeah, body position versus power. Cadence we can measure directly from the way that your body's actually moving, which is quite a cool one. So you don't need to buy a separate cadence meter. And lateral movement as well, which some might think, well, why do I care about that? But lateral movement, which is how you're moving left and right on the saddle, is you can indicate fatigue on that with your core. It's basically how strong is my core at the moment. And it all tells that story again about efficiency, fatigue, and beginning to predict when those things will come based on a certain race. So that's the kind of more exciting stuff, which
because you alluded to, you kind of teased us there with the predictive aspects of that. So maybe you could kind of talk a little bit about where you see that going. That'd be fascinating.
Yeah, well, at INCUS, we see a future of data being used. As I keep saying the word stories, it's all about those vivid stories. I know I sound like a stock record here. What we believe the future is about using the past or the present, your present performance and your historic numbers to tell you what you need to do tomorrow, or even what you need to do over the next training block to achieve a certain goal. And because of the quality of the results that we're producing with the Nova, and because we've developed everything from scratch into one proprietary system that's really nicely interconnected. So we've got the devices, the analytics, the app, the garments, everything kind of works seamlessly. We can then start to optimize that experience to really integrate these numbers into directly assisting training. so the way that we see that happening, a starting point is what we have been teasing again, something that we call active assistance. So the device, the Nova, has vibration feedback actually in there. So you can wisely configure that vibration feedback to, let's say, for your body angles. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of our insights says when I typically rotate more on this side, I get a higher velocity gain, let's say. You can actually program it into the app to say, I want to rotate on this left-hand side this amount, and on the right-hand side this amount. And it will actually vibrate on my back in real time to try to build up that muscle memory, to try to convert those numbers into actually that technique that's going to improve in the future. So with the predictive analytics, that's kind of separate. But what it is it's saying for this particular race or for this particular event in this time frame, this is the performance from where you are now to where you need to be. So again, that story starts is, where am I now? Where have I been in the past? What do I need to do in the future to get to a point that I deem successful? Whether that is just finishing a long distance event, or whether it's hitting a certain PB. And so we're able to use that wealth of information to begin to craft how you fatigue and understanding how your body responds to certain kind of environments or events or distances or efforts or whatever it's going to be, and we can start to build up that picture towards something that then can be proactive, because that's why we believe the real future of using data in sport really should be.
No, absolutely. I get a sense that the wearables space has definitely evolved. There's we obviously, we had Fitbit and we had a number of other products that have definitely driven wearables to where it is today. You probably saw the product Super Sapiens that sort of was released recently, obviously with the energy monitoring and what you guys are doing in terms of like body movement. So I'm getting a sense that these sort of more, I would arguably say, more innovative specialist wearables are sort of breaking through and breaking new ground, and as you've alluded to, sort of represent a new way forward for athletes. How do you sort of see the wearables sector evolving, let's say, over the coming 12 months? Because we've had a tough few months this year, and the industry and consumers are still reeling a bit. It'd be interesting to get your perspectives as to how you see the market moving for within this, and what also you envisage for your business as well.
Well, I think it's fascinating, the new kind of stuff that's coming out, particularly over the last kind of 12 to 18 months. When we started the INCUS journey, at least in the very initial idea stage, Fitbit wasn't even a thing. And so it was, at the time, it wasn't really, it was quite of a new idea, which it's been great as the journey through INCUS has kind of developed, to see the wider space, becoming more accustomed to that kind of quantified self movement, so measuring and monitoring performance or lifestyle habits and such like that. And particularly in the last year, as you say, with examples like Super Sapien, there's also some amazing stuff in terms of swim tech, which has been really cool, because that's been a space that has been, I feel like, lacking in the last 10 years, so shall we say, in terms of innovation in the space, where the running and the cycling have had quite a lot of development. And so we're seeing people being a lot more bold, I think, in terms of pushing investment and innovation in technology to measure what used to be things that you would only typically measure in a laboratory environment. So the kind of technologies that you're seeing nowadays are things that have been under the surface in clinical settings, but they're now being applied and kind of made easy to use, which I think is really the key thing. And so the guys like, you made the example of Super Sapiens. They're a great one, because that's, from what I know, it's the first time they've been able to kind of track that with such ease in terms of glucose. And that can have tremendous kind of impact when applied to endurance sports. So where do I see it going, really? I think, and it kind of comes back to why are we collecting all this data? I think a lot of people are asking that question now. It's like, well, yeah, I've done my run, I've tracked that, and that was yesterday, and what do I do with it now? And I think that is the question that we all as an industry need to start to answer. And this is where we are going with INCUS. Is what now? Why do I care? You know, what do those numbers really mean? And so for us, again, stories, I'll go back to that kind of link. It's about using those numbers to inform what we're going to do in the future, rather than simply saying, oh, that was really cool that I did that in the past. I mean, that's great. But where I see these types of technologies, the combination of all of these inputs. So it's wonderful that you've got people like monitoring glucose. You've got some incredible heads-up displays as well in swimming and in across cycling as well. I've seen some. Another rather niche measurements like pressure on your foot, things like that. These are all, I see it very much as trying to build up a 3D image. So if you've got different cameras at different angles, you can see different perspectives of the same thing. And if you use each camera, you can build up a 3D image. Yeah, that's the way I see the different types of sensors that we're looking at here. So you've got one for your glucose monitoring, another one on your feet to measure direct cadence, because different parts of the body measure things different, like much better. So you can measure your cadence far better from your foot than you can do from your wrist, for example. So all of these different technologies start to build up this picture. And then with technologies like what INCUS is trying to do, is actually knitting these numbers together into a picture to build that 3D image, almost that really high quality image. And so it relies on people to be pushing the boundaries in this measurement technology to be able to then start to formulate that kind of image, 3D image of what the body's doing, and therefore how we can improve it in the future. So in the future of where we're going, I think there's going to be very much more about solving the question of why does this matter, and how can I use this to get better tomorrow, rather than simply, you know, that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. Oh, this has been absolutely fascinating. I think I could probably talk for another 30 minutes to an hour or so, but I'm sure you've got other things to do. So, yeah, let's definitely keep in touch, because I think some of the things that you've got planning sound very interesting. I look forward to hearing more, obviously, about the run and the bike. And, you know, thanks ever so much for your time, Chris. Really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, it's really good to be part. See you later.
Take care. Cheers, Steve.